All right, so we're going to continue on with lesson 6. We're still doing this sort of weird mental mathy thing. So um, this question up here says, express 9 hours as a percentage of 3 days. Okay, so I'm just going to talk to you and write down where my brain goes with this. The first thing I think about is I want both quantities to be in the same unit of measurement. I don't want to think about hours and days. I either want to think about all hours or all days. I think it's easier to put 3 days into hours than it is to think about how much of a day 9 hours is. So I'm just going to rewrite the quantities. I got 9 hours, and then 3 days. Well, I got to do 3 times 24, right? Because there's 24 hours in a day. And so I'm supposed to be doing this in my head. So let me think about how I would do this in my head. I'm going to do the 3 times the 4, which is 12, and the 3 times the 20, which is 60. And I add those two together and I get 72. Okay, so basically I'm trying to figure out what percent is 9 out of 72. Right? So now my brain is going, okay, 9 is what percent of 72? And those aren't super easy numbers to work with, right? Like 9 and 72. This would be way easier if they gave us like 10 and 50 or something. Okay, so now I'm thinking in my head, well, 9 out of 72 or 9 per 72. So the fraction 972 or 970 seconds, whatever you want to say, sort of pops into my head now. And I'm thinking, okay, does that simplify to something easy? So I'm counting by nines now. I'm going 9, 18, 27. Let me keep track of them like this too. 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72. Yes, 9 goes into 72 8 times. And so that means that this has to be equal to 1/8. Okay, so now all I have to do is, if I can write 1/8 as a percent, then I'm done. This is one that I really recommend you just memorize. It comes up enough to where it's worthwhile to just have it in your head, because it's not easy to do. Because, well, 1/8, okay, so 1/8 is a percent. That's the same as 1/8 of 100, and that's not easy. Like 100 divided by 8 isn't like a whole number clean division. Well, I know. So now here's where my brain's going. I mean, I know the answer. I have this memorized, but I want to try to walk you through a way that you could get it. Well, okay. So now my brain goes, 1/8 is half of 1/4, right? If you cut something into fourths like this, and then you want to cut it into eighths, you have to cut each one of those pieces in half. Okay, so I know that a fourth is 25%. So if I can just figure out what half of that is, then I have an eighth as a percent. So I want you to think about that for a few seconds before I tell you what that is. Try to think if you can figure out what half of 25% is. Pause the video if you want before I say the answer. All right, well, it's 12.5%. So the answer to the question essentially is 9 hours is 12.5% of 3 days. I don't know when you would ever need to know that. Like if you were doing something that's going to last 3 entire days and you were 9 hours away through it or something. I don't know. Okay, next one. Richard works from 11 a.m. to 3 a.m. That's a really long time. When I first read that, I thought 4 hours, but then I thought about, wait, no, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. would be 4 hours. This is all the way to 3 in the morning. Like think about it as like 11 a.m. When you're at school, you'd normally be in like third period around now, to 3 a.m. like when most people are asleep. So this is like a solid 16 hours here. He's working a long shift. His dinner break is 75% of the way through his work shift. What time is Richard's dinner break? Okay, so now my brain is going, we need to figure out what is 75% of 16 hours. And then once we can figure that out, then we can figure out what time it must be when he takes his lunch. Well, I want you to pause the video here and see if you can do this one ahead of me just explaining it, because this one's not too bad. This one, the numbers come out nice and easy and stuff. So pause the video, figure it out in your own head, and then unpause. Okay, hopefully you're coming back from a pause. And so 75% in my brain, I'm thinking about the fact that that's the same as 3/4. And then I'm thinking, okay, so find 1/4 and then multiply by 3. Okay, and then my brain goes, all right, well, 1/4 of 16. You to get 1/4, you just multiply by 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So 1/4 of 16 is 4. And 4 times 3 equals 12. So going back to the question, this tells us how many hours he works into his shift before he takes his dinner break. So he starts his shift at 11 a.m. It says right here. And he works 12 hours before taking his dinner break. Well, the way a clock works is whatever time it is, once it goes around 12 hours, that's one whole lap around the clock, but it just switches from AM to PM. So 12 hours from 11 a.m. is 11 p.m. He takes dinner break at 11 p.m. All right, let's move on. It says, at a playoff basketball game, there were 370 fans cheering for School A and 555 fans cheering for School B. Oh, this has got some big numbers in it, and they want us to do it in our head. Okay, maybe I should start doing these before I record the video. Express the number of fans cheering for School A as a percent of the number of fans cheering for School B. Okay, so anytime you're going to represent one number as a percent of the other one, you're really doing this formula. Percent equals part over whole. Okay, and in this case, they want us to represent the ones cheering for School A as a percent or as a part of the fans cheering for School B. So in my head, I'm forming the fraction 370 over 555, or I'm thinking about like 370 out of 555. Okay, I don't know what the answer to this one's going to be, but what I like to do is let's start with a reasonable estimate so that we know that if we start to get away from this, our answer must be way off. And I'm noticing the fact that this is 300 and something and this is 500 and something. And if it were just 300 over 500, well, then you'd have some cancellation and you would have essentially just 3 over 5. And yeah, this isn't exactly 3 over 5. It's not exactly 300 over 500, but it's reasonably close to the point where I better get an answer that's kind of close to 3/5. And 3/5 is the same as 6/10, which is the same as 60%. So in my head, I'm keeping the fact that the answer is close to 60%. All right. Next, I'm looking at the fact that, well, what do I want to do with this? Well, let's see just how close to 60% it is. I know that 10% of 555 equals 55.5. Now that's not the easiest number of all time to work with, but I think we can kind of do it if we're really careful. Because I'm going to pick I know that this 0.5, as long as I multiply by an even number, then this decimal will go away, right? Like if you multiply this by 2, you get 111 with no decimal. If you multiply it by 4, you get 222 with no decimal. And if you multiply it by by 6, you get 333 with no decimal, right? Because I'm just doing 6 times 5 is 300, 6 times 50 is 300, 6 times 5 is 30, 6 times 0.5 is 3, right? So I was able to do this in my head. I just got 333. Okay. And now I'm short by how much? 37. I have another 37 here. So I have to figure out what is 37 out of 555, and I'll get the answer. Wow, that's hard though. What is 37 out of 555? I mean, if I could do that, then I would have just done 370 in the first place. Let's see here. Well, maybe this works out nicely. Well, 337 times 10. I can do that one in my head. That's 370. Okay, and then what if I add, what's 37 times 5? Can I do that one in my head? Let's see here. 5 times 30 is 150. 5 times 7 is 35, so it's 185. Okay, so we're on track now. Okay, because I'm pretty sure when I add these two, I get 555. Yep. Okay, so that means 37 is 1/15. Okay. Right? Because I had to multiply it by 10 and by 5 and add those two together. So this is the new piece of information I have. 37 is 1/15 of 555. Okay. So that means going back up to this here, right? Oh, I can't believe they want us to do this one in your head. If you're not following me and you couldn't do this one in your head, do not feel bad, because I borderline wanted to give up on this one myself and grab the calculator that I got sitting over here. This is wild. So I know that this part right here is 60%. Let's rewind so you can remember, so you can know why this is true. Because 10% of 555 is 55.5. And then I multiplied that by 6 and got 333. And then this right here is 1/15. If I can figure out what 1/15 is as a percent, then I add it to 60% and I get the answer. This is just a memorized fact. I just happen to know that, well, let me make sure this fact is actually right. No, actually I don't think it is. All right, you know what? I'm giving up on this one. I'm going 1 divided by 15. Oh, I was going to say that, but I thought I was wrong. Okay, so that is 6.6 repeating percent. And that means this whole thing is 66.6 repeating percent, which equals 2/3. So the whole time the thing was 2/3. I wonder how we were supposed to see that easier. How are we, so this is the answer. Is 66.6% is the answer, which is the same as 2/3, which isn't that bad, right? That's a nice easy fraction. But how are we supposed to see that easier? I mean, did they want us to just like reduce this fraction in our heads or something? You know, if you let's go ahead and end the video here, and that will be sort of like a challenge for the end of this video. Is, you know what the answer is now, right? Let me double check my answer just to make sure I didn't mess this up. Let's see here. 370 divided by 555. Yeah, so it comes out to 66.6% or 2/3. My challenge to you is see if you can come up with a better, clearer, easier mental math strategy for doing this one than mine, because mine was admittedly not very good.